Maybe you feel like you're not smart enough, not confident enough, or not lucky enough. If that sounds familiar, then this story is for you. Let me take you to a quiet rooftop in a small town in a developing country. There, under the stars, sits a teenage boy. His name doesn't matter, because this story could be about anyone. Maybe it's about you. Every night he climbs up to the roof with a notebook in his hand and a dream in his heart. He looks at the stars and imagines a different life. One where he works at a big tech company like Google. He dreams of being part of the future, of creating something meaningful, of making his family proud. But there's one problem. He doesn't speak English, not even a single word. He knows that without English, the world stays small. The doors to opportunity remain closed, and the stars above feel far, far away. Still, the dream stays with him. Too big to forget, too bright to ignore. He doesn't know how, and he doesn't know when, but he whispers to the night, "One day." Now let's step into his daily life and see just how hard things really are when you don't speak English. The boy who never spoke in class. In a small town where the streets were always dusty and the houses stood close like old friends, there was a boy named Arif. He walked to school every morning in silence, carrying his worn-out bag and his heavy thoughts. School was supposed to be a place for learning, for growing. But for Arif, it was a place where fear lived, especially in English class. The teacher would walk in, call out names, and ask students to read aloud. Arif's heart would beat faster every time, not because he was excited, but because he was afraid. Afraid of being chosen, afraid of saying the wrong word, afraid of being laughed at. Whenever the teacher called his name, he would freeze, his voice would disappear, his hands would sweat, and the room would suddenly feel too big, too bright, too loud. Sometimes the teacher would sigh. Sometimes the students would chuckle. But no one really knew what Arif was feeling on the inside, how hard he was trying just to stay calm. He sat at the back of the classroom, near the broken window, where the wind sometimes whispered things he couldn't say. He watched others speak with confidence, even if their English wasn't perfect. He wished he could be like them, but he couldn't even say a full sentence. Not out loud. Not yet. After school, he would walk home slowly, replaying the day in his mind. Every silence, every mistake, every missed chance. His parents never asked much about school. They were busy running their small shop, a dusty corner shop that sold rice, salt, and biscuits. Arif helped there every evening, arranging bottles, sweeping the floor, giving change. One day, a group of students came into the shop, laughing loudly. Arif recognized them from school. One of them pointed at him and said in the local language, "There's the mute boy. Say something in English." They all laughed. Arif didn't reply. He just looked down, wishing he could disappear. That night, he sat on the rooftop again, staring at the stars. He thought about all the things he wanted to say. He wanted to ask questions in class. He wanted to talk to tourists. He wanted to watch English movies without subtitles. He wanted to understand the world beyond his small town. But most of all, he wanted to speak without fear. He remembered something his grandfather once told him. Your voice is your power. If you don't use it, you give it away. But Arif didn't feel powerful. He felt invisible. At school, English felt like a wall he couldn't climb. The grammar was confusing. The pronunciation felt impossible. He couldn't understand the fast words in the audio lessons. Every time he opened his textbook, he felt lost, like walking in a forest without a map. But deep inside, something refused to quit. Even in the middle of shame, something inside him whispered, "Try again." So, he started listening more in class. Not speaking, just listening. He began copying the way the teacher said words. At home, when no one was watching, he would stand in front of a cracked mirror and repeat simple phrases. "My name is Arif. I like apples. I want to learn English." His voice sounded strange at first, weak. But each time it grew a little stronger. One evening, as he was organizing some old boxes in the shop's storeroom, he found a small, dusty English grammar book. The pages were yellow, and the cover was almost torn off, but it was his now, his secret weapon. He took it upstairs and began reading, one page at a time, one sentence at a time. Every word was a struggle, but every word was a step forward. No one at school noticed the quiet change happening inside him. No one saw him whispering English sentences to the mirror. No one knew he was reading that old grammar book under a dim light, while others played games outside. But change doesn't need attention. It just needs time. Week after week, Arif kept practicing. He didn't speak up in class, not yet. But something in his eyes had changed. He wasn't avoiding the teacher's gaze anymore. He was preparing. Quietly. Patiently. Then one day the teacher asked, "Who can tell me the difference between is and are?" A few students looked around, unsure. Arif felt his hand move. Slowly. Almost without thinking, he raised it. The room went silent. The teacher looked surprised. "Yes, Arif." His heart beat so fast he thought it would explode, but he opened his mouth, and in a soft, shaking voice he said, "Is for one, are for many." There was a pause. The teacher smiled. "Correct." That was it. Just one sentence. But for Arif, it felt like a mountain had moved. The classroom didn't feel so scary anymore. For the first time, he had spoken, and he had been heard. The fear didn't disappear overnight, but that moment gave him something he had never felt before: courage. A quiet, growing courage. He knew the road ahead was long. He still had much to learn. But now, he believed that one day, he wouldn't just speak English. He would speak it well. And for the first time, he went home with a smile. Tomorrow would be different. Not easier, but different. Because now, he had taken the first step. The stranger who spoke English. It was an ordinary afternoon. The sun was hot, and the little shop was quiet. Arif sat behind the wooden counter, slowly counting coins. His father was restocking the shelves, wiping sweat from his forehead with a worn cloth. The fan above them made a soft humming sound, trying its best to fight the heat. Then the door creaked open, and the bell above it rang. A woman stepped inside. She wore a large hat, sunglasses, and a backpack. Her skin was pale, her clothes light, and her smile kind. Arif had never seen her before. She looked around the shop, then walked slowly to the counter. "Hi, water?" she said, pointing behind him. Arif froze. She spoke English. He stared at her, blinking, unsure what to say. His father looked up and smiled politely, but it was clear he didn't understand a word. The woman tried again. "Water. Bottle. How much?" Still, no answer. She took a bottle from the shelf and placed it on the counter. Then she pointed at some snacks. "2 of these, please." Her voice was soft, patient. Arif felt his chest tighten. He wanted to help. He wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. He looked at his father, who only nodded and smiled awkwardly. Arif picked up the calculator, typed in the price, and turned it toward her. The woman gave the money, nodded a polite thank you, and left. The bell rang again as the door closed behind her. And just like that, she was gone. Arif stood there in silence, his heart still beating fast. That was English. It was the first time he had heard someone speak it directly to him, not through a phone, not on a screen, not from a teacher, but right there, in real life. And he had said nothing. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay on the thin mattress in his small room, staring at the ceiling. The fan turned slowly above him. He kept thinking about the woman, her calm voice, her gentle words, the way she tried to speak slowly so he could understand. But he hadn't understood, and that hurt. He imagined another version of the day, one where he smiled back, said, "Yes, this is water," and asked, "Where are you from?" He imagined her smiling, surprised. Maybe they would talk more. Maybe she would say, "Your English is good." But none of that had happened, because he didn't know how. He sat up in bed, turned on the small lamp beside him, and pulled out an old notebook from his school bag. He opened it to a clean page. He picked up a pencil. His hand shook a little. Then, slowly, he wrote, "I will learn English." It was the first English sentence he had ever written. He stared at the words for a long time. They weren't perfect. The letters were messy, but they were real. They were his. He smiled. In that moment, something inside him changed. Before, English had felt like a punishment. Something he had to learn for school, for grades, for passing exams. But now, it felt different. Now, it was a bridge, a key, a way to connect. If he had known English, he could have helped the woman. He could have made her feel welcome. He could have learned about her country, her life, her story. And maybe one day, if he learned enough, he could go to her country. He could see the world. He could speak to people from everywhere. He could be free. That single thought lit a fire in him. But the next morning, reality came crashing in. Arif had no money for English classes, no smartphone with apps, no fast internet. The TV at home only showed local news. The school's English lessons were too fast, and the teacher barely noticed him. Still, he had that notebook, and he had a dream. So he took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "Start small." Each morning before school, he wrote a new English word in the notebook. Just one. He copied it 5 times. Then he wrote a sentence with it. He didn't always get it right, but he tried. In the shop, he started reading the labels on snacks and bottles. Chocolate, milk, salted chips. He wrote them down. At night, he repeated them aloud. He had no teacher, so he became his own. He had no classroom, so the world became his classroom. In time, he would look back at this moment, this exact day, as the beginning of everything. But right now, he was still just a boy with a pencil, a notebook, and a sentence that changed his life. I will learn English. And that was enough to begin. Learning from scraps. The next few weeks were quiet but full of small, invisible victories. Arif didn't have books or a teacher. He didn't have a computer or a proper dictionary. But what he did have was something far more powerful. the will to try. Every morning before school, he searched for words wherever he could find them. In the small alleys behind the market, there were always torn newspapers and empty food wrappers tossed aside. Most people stepped over them without looking, but not Arif. He picked them up carefully, brushing off the dust, scanning them for any English word he could recognize. Some of the pages were advertisements. Some were weather reports. Others made no sense to him. But even a single English word was a treasure. He started collecting those scraps in an old envelope. At night, he would sit under the weak yellow light of a flickering bulb and read them again and again. Sometimes he didn't understand the meaning, but he tried sounding them out, writing them down in his notebook, then saying them aloud until they felt natural in his mouth. He stood in front of the cracked mirror in his room, holding a toothbrush like a microphone, and practiced sentences he had copied from old school books thrown out near the local school dumpster. "How are you?" "My name is Arif." "What time is it?" Each sentence felt like a step forward, even if no one else could see it. In the market, he paid attention to every English word he saw. On biscuit packets, soap bars, shampoo bottles. Buy one, get one free. Extra strong. New and improved. These weren't just products anymore. They were lessons. Sometimes he would whisper the words as he walked home from school. He didn't care if people thought he was strange. Every whisper made his confidence a little stronger. His old phone didn't have a good screen or working apps, but it could play FM radio. Late at night, after finishing work at the shop, Arif would lie down on his mattress, place the phone close to his ear, and tune in to an English news channel. The voices were fast and unclear. He couldn't understand much, but he listened anyway. Night after night, those voices became more familiar. He learned to recognize certain phrases. "Good morning," "breaking news," "thank you for listening." Every time he understood a phrase, his eyes lit up with joy. His family noticed the change. At first, they were confused. Why was Arif spending hours reading old trash? Why was he talking to himself in the mirror? His younger brother teased him. His uncle laughed and said, "You think you're going to London with that broken phone?" His mother, kind but tired, told him gently, "It's good to dream, but don't forget real life." Even his father shook his head once and said, "This English won't feed us, son." But Arif didn't stop. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him had shifted. The more others doubted him, the more he believed in himself. He knew he had a long way to go, but he also knew something else, that giving up would hurt more than trying. One afternoon, while helping in the shop, a young couple walked in. They looked like travelers. They wore light clothes, carried backpacks, and held a map. Arif noticed them speaking softly in English. His heart started to beat faster. The woman looked up and asked, "Is there a bus stop nearby?" Her voice was clear, her smile gentle. For a moment, Arif froze, just like before. The words felt heavy in his throat. But then, slowly, he answered, "Yes, bus stop. There," and pointed down the street. The couple looked at him, surprised. The man nodded and said, "Thank you." Arif smiled. "You're welcome," he replied. Just 3 words. But for the first time in his life, a complete English conversation had happened, and he had been part of it. They left the shop, and Arif stood behind the counter, stunned. His father looked at him with raised eyebrows, then nodded slowly. No teasing, no laughing. Just a quiet kind of respect. That night, Arif couldn't sleep. He replayed the moment again and again in his mind. The words had come out of him like birds finally released from a cage. It was a short sentence, but it had meant everything. The next morning, he walked to school with his shoulders a little higher. His steps felt lighter. He kept practicing, kept reading, kept speaking. The mirror became his best friend, and the notebook his map. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. Their neighbor, an old retired teacher named Mr. Rahman, was walking past the shop. He often bought bread or eggs, but never stayed long. That day, he paused. He had seen Arif standing outside, repeating English sentences under his breath. He had heard the quiet voice through the open window at night. He stepped closer and said, "You've been practicing English, haven't you?" Arif looked up, surprised. "Yes, I try," he said shyly. Mr. Rahman nodded slowly. Then he smiled and said, "Wait here." 10 minutes later, he returned, holding a small, dusty laptop in his hands. "It's old, but it still works. I think you'll put it to good use." Arif's eyes widened. He didn't know what to say. He took the laptop in his hands carefully, like it was made of glass. "Thank you," he whispered. Mr. Rahman placed a hand on his shoulder. "Keep going, son. The world opens up when you speak its language." And just like that, Arif's journey was about to enter a new chapter, with a new tool, a new hope, and the same unshakable dream. The gift of a second-hand laptop. The old laptop sat on the table like a piece of forgotten history. It was heavy, thick, and covered in scratches. The screen had a small crack on one side, and 2 keys were missing. The battery lasted only 15 minutes without power. But to Arif, it was more than just a machine. It was a doorway. Mr. Rahman, the retired teacher next door, had placed it in Arif's hands with a simple smile and a few soft words. Use it well. That night, Arif didn't sleep. He plugged in the charger, turned on the dusty screen, and waited as the laptop slowly came to life. It made strange clicking noises. It froze twice. But eventually a browser opened. Arif stared at the blank search bar. His hands shook slightly as he typed his first words, "How to learn English fast." What appeared next was magic. Hundreds of results, websites, videos, pictures, free tools, voices from around the world. He clicked on a video titled, "Speak English in 30 Days. The host smiled and said slowly, "Hello, my name is Anna. Let's learn English together." Arif paused the video and repeated the sentence out loud, then again and again. "Hello, my name is Arif." He smiled. The sound of his own voice no longer scared him. The laptop wasn't fast. Sometimes it took 5 minutes just to load a page. But Arif didn't mind. Every minute he spent online felt like an adventure. He discovered grammar websites with simple exercises. He downloaded PDFs of beginner-level graded readers. Some were stories about students, travelers, or people chasing dreams, just like him. He read them slowly, underlining words he didn't understand. Then he would search those words and write them on small sticky notes he kept on his wall. Soon, the wall above his bed was full of colors, pink, yellow, blue, each with a single English word: courage, journey, learn, future. It wasn't just vocabulary, it was motivation. Every day after school and shop work, Arif came home, opened the laptop, and started his self-made routine. He watched English learning channels on YouTube. He found videos where teachers explained common phrases. He paused after every sentence, copied it into his notebook, and repeated it until the words felt natural in his mouth. He also began paying attention to how people spoke, the rise and fall of their voice, the way they smiled between words, how they used their hands when they talked. He practiced their accents, their rhythm, their pauses. Sometimes he felt silly, but slowly, the mirror version of Arif began to look more confident, more comfortable, more alive. He even found a YouTube channel where people shared their English learning journeys. One video was titled, "From Village Boy to English Speaker in 1 Year." The speaker had a story just like his. That night, Arif cried. Not because he was sad, but because for the first time, he didn't feel alone. The laptop became his secret weapon. It sat quietly in the corner of his small room, waiting patiently every day for him to return. And every day he came back with more hunger. His pronunciation improved. His understanding of simple stories grew. He began to write short diary entries in English. "Today I studied hard. I feel happy when I learn. One day, I will go to America." At the shop, when foreign tourists came, Arif no longer froze. He smiled and said, "Hello. How can I help you?" Sometimes the words came out wrong. Sometimes he had to repeat himself. But he was no longer afraid. Every mistake became a lesson. Every conversation was a chance to grow. One evening, while strolling through a grammar blog, he saw an ad. "Apply for our online English program, free for selected students." Arif clicked. The course was offered by a foreign education platform. It included video lessons, speaking practice, and a certificate at the end. He read the details again and again. His heart raced. He wanted it. He needed it. The application asked for a short paragraph. "Why do you want to learn English?" He took a deep breath and began typing. "I am from a small town. I did not speak English before. Now I study every day. English helps me grow. I want to help others and travel. This course will help me go forward." He read it 10 times before hitting submit. For 3 days, he checked his email every hour. Each time his heart jumped at the sight of a new message. But nothing came. On the 4th day, the email finally arrived. He opened it quickly, scanning for one word. "Congratulations." But it wasn't there. "Dear applicant, thank you for your interest. We received many applications. Unfortunately, you were not selected." His hands went cold. His eyes stopped blinking. The room felt too quiet. Rejection. Even after all the hours of study, the sticky notes, the practice, the videos, the books. Still, it wasn't enough. He closed the laptop slowly and sat on the floor, staring at the wall. For a long time, he didn't move. But then, his eyes found the sticky notes above his bed. One of them said, "Believe." Another, "Start again." He read them over and over. That night, he opened his notebook and wrote one sentence. "I will try again." He closed it, smiled gently, and whispered, "Thank you, laptop. We still have work to do." The rejection hurt, yes, but the journey wasn't over. It was only changing shape. Failing the first test. The test was online. It was his first official English exam, the gateway to a free scholarship course. Arif sat in front of his old laptop, hands sweating, heart pounding. The instructions were clear. Answer the grammar questions, write a short paragraph, and complete the listening section. It didn't seem impossible. He had prepared for this moment for months. He had even imagined the email he would receive afterward. "Congratulations. You have been selected." But that email never came. 3 days later, the results were posted. Arif clicked the link with shaky fingers, scanning the list of names. His wasn't there. He refreshed the page, thinking maybe there was a mistake, but it was real. He had failed. His heart dropped like a stone. The light in the room suddenly felt too bright. His throat tightened. He closed the laptop and stared at the floor in silence. All those nights talking to himself in the mirror, all the hours spent reading torn-up books, all the sticky notes on his wall. What was it all for? He didn't cry. Not yet. But something inside him went quiet. That evening, he didn't practice English. He didn't write in his notebook. He didn't listen to the radio. He just lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the laughter of his siblings in the next room. Life was moving on, but he felt frozen. The next day was worse. He passed by a tourist in the market who asked, "Can you help me find the train station?" Arif hesitated. His mind went blank. The words didn't come. The tourist walked away, confused. Arif stood there, ashamed. He didn't even try. He began to doubt everything. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I started too late. Maybe people like me don't get chances like this. For 3 days, he avoided English. The sticky notes stayed untouched. His dictionary remained closed. The laptop gathered dust. His family didn't notice. They never believed this English dream would last long anyway. They thought he'd grow out of it. But on the 4th night, something strange happened. Arif couldn't sleep. He turned on the laptop just to pass time. Without thinking, he opened YouTube and typed, "I failed my English test." One video appeared at the top. "How I failed 5 times but still learned English." He clicked it. A young man appeared on screen, speaking slowly and clearly. "I wasn't always good at English," the man said. "In fact, I failed again and again, but every failure taught me something new." Arif leaned forward. The speaker talked about his first failure, how it broke his confidence, how people laughed at him, and how he stopped believing in himself. But he didn't stop trying. He made a new plan, he built new habits, and slowly, step by step, he improved. Arif's eyes filled with tears, not because of sadness, but because he saw himself in that story. He wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, this failure wasn't the end. He closed the video and sat in silence. Then, he stood up and faced the mirror. "I failed," he whispered, "but I'm not finished." He opened his notebook and wrote, "Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success." That night, something inside him shifted. The pain didn't disappear, but it gave him a new kind of strength. He realized that his dream wasn't just about passing one test. It was about becoming the kind of person who doesn't give up. So, he made a decision. This time, he would go all in. The next morning, Arif created a new routine, stricter, stronger, more focused. He woke up at 5 a.m. every day and read 5 English words before breakfast. He carried a small notebook in his pocket and wrote down anything he didn't understand. At lunch, he watched one English video and copied down every sentence word for word. In the evenings, he practiced speaking into the mirror for 30 minutes without stopping. He recorded himself and listened to the playback, noting every mistake. He made flashcards, stuck them on the walls, the cupboard, even the bathroom mirror. When he brushed his teeth, he repeated, "I am learning. I am improving. I will speak English." He stopped caring what people thought. His little brother laughed at him once while he was repeating phrases out loud. Arif just smiled and said in English, "That's okay. Laugh now. One day I'll surprise you." The words didn't feel perfect yet. His grammar still had gaps. His pronunciation wasn't always clear, but his fire had returned, brighter than before. He started rewriting the sentences from the test he had failed. He found the mistakes. He corrected them. He watched beginner videos again, even if he had seen them before. He learned from his failure, word by word. After 2 months, he took a practice test online. This time, he didn't freeze. He answered every question. He wrote with confidence. He understood the listening section. He didn't get everything right, but he didn't fail. He was improving, and that was enough. One night, looking at the sticky notes above his bed, Arif smiled. One of them read, "Future." Another, "Never give up." He picked up his pen and wrote one more note to add to the wall. "Failure is my teacher." He placed it in the center, where he would see it every day. The 6-month transformation. It started like a spark. A small decision, born from failure, lit a fire that didn't burn out. 6 months ago, Arif had felt broken, unsure of himself, ready to quit. But now, something had changed. He was not the same boy who froze in front of the screen or turned away from tourists in the street. He was someone else. Someone who showed up every single day. His English practice was no longer a hobby. It had become a full-time job. Each morning, while the sky was still dark and his family still sleeping, Arif put on his second-hand earphones and played an English podcast. At first, he didn't understand everything, but he focused on the rhythm, the emotion, the repetition. One phrase stuck in his head. "If you want to change your life, change your habits." He wrote it down and repeated it out loud. Every day, the same podcast. Every day, a little more understanding. By lunchtime, he took out his journal. It wasn't fancy, just a small notebook with bent pages. But it was his space. In it, he wrote simple sentences. "Today, I feel tired. I want to speak better English. I will never stop learning." Over time, the sentences grew longer. His tenses improved. His vocabulary expanded. He started to reflect on his thoughts, his dreams, and his fears, all in English. In the evenings, after dinner, when the house quieted down, Arif opened his laptop. He didn't scroll through social media or watch entertainment videos. Instead, he searched for motivational stories in English. He listened to people talk about their journeys, people who had started with nothing, who had failed and gotten back up. He paused the videos and repeated sentences out loud. He shadowed the speakers, trying to match their tone and rhythm. "I believe in myself," he said into the mirror, over and over again. Slowly, his voice became steadier, stronger. The biggest change, however, came when he joined a free online speaking group. The first time, his hands trembled as he clicked "Join." His heart raced. He could barely say his name. I am Arif, from Myanmar," he stuttered. His voice cracked. He wanted to leave the call, but the people on the screen smiled kindly and waited patiently. One of them said, "It's okay. We understand. Just try." And so he tried. He made mistakes. He forgot words, but he kept speaking. and something magical happened. People listened. They encouraged him. They typed "good job" in the chat. One person even messaged him privately. "Your story inspires me. Don't stop." That message stayed with him for days. Week by week, his confidence grew. He stopped being afraid of grammar mistakes. He started enjoying the sound of his own voice in English. He learned how to introduce himself, how to talk about his country, how to express opinions. He even started helping beginners in the group, sharing tips and simple phrases that had helped him. He wasn't just learning English anymore. He was becoming someone new. He walked with his head higher. When he heard English spoken in the street, he didn't look away. He listened. He no longer saw English as a wall between him and the world. He saw it as a bridge. His family noticed too. His younger brother, who once laughed at him, started asking, "What does this word mean?" His mother, though she didn't understand English, smiled when she saw him writing and said, "You look different now, more confident." One evening, Arif sat at his desk, surrounded by sticky notes, journal pages, and books. He thought about everything he had learned in the last 6 months, not just words and grammar, but discipline, courage, and belief in himself. He whispered, "I'm proud of you," to the boy he used to be, the boy who had once wanted to quit. Then he saw a post online. "Remote internship for English learners. Apply now." His heart skipped a beat. It was a volunteer internship for a global youth project. Applicants had to record a short video in English and write a paragraph explaining why they wanted to join. 6 months ago, he would have closed the page. But not now. He took a deep breath and pressed record. "Hi, I'm Arif, and I love learning English. It has changed my life. I want to help others like me, people who think they can't do it, but they can." He smiled into the camera. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He clicked send. For days, he checked his email every morning and night, trying not to get his hopes up. Doubts crept in. Maybe my English isn't good enough. Maybe others are better. But deep inside, a quiet voice said, "You've come so far." That matters too. Then, one morning, the email came. "Congratulations, Arif. You've been accepted." He stared at the screen, hardly believing it. His hands shook as he read the message again, and again, and again. Tears filled his eyes, not from sadness, but from joy, from pride, from months of silent effort finally being seen. He ran to tell his mother, holding the laptop close. "Ma, look, they chose me." She didn't understand every word, but she saw his face, and that was enough. That night, Arif sat in front of his mirror. He remembered the first time he had tried to say a sentence in English and how nervous he had been. Now, he looked into his own eyes and said, clearly, confidently, "This is just the beginning." From a boy who couldn't say hello to a young man speaking to the world, the transformation was real. And it wasn't finished yet. Internship to inspiration. The first day of the internship was like stepping into a different world. Everyone spoke fast English. The meetings were filled with technical terms, polite jokes, and questions that he didn't always understand. Arif sat quietly at first, afraid to speak. His hands trembled as he typed notes. When someone asked him a question, he hesitated before answering, afraid of saying the wrong thing. His sentences were slow, his grammar not perfect. But he tried. He felt like the smallest voice in the room, but he refused to give up. Every night after work, he opened his journal and wrote about the things he didn't understand. He searched for words he had heard during the meetings. He practiced them aloud. Deadline, report, feedback, project timeline. He repeated them again and again. He also watched business English videos and took notes. On weekends, he asked his speaking group for help. How do I explain an idea clearly? How can I sound more professional? Day by day, he began to change. At first, he only wrote emails. Then he was asked to give a short update during a weekly meeting. His heart raced, but he said yes. He practiced for hours. When the time came, he read from his notes, slowly and clearly. This week, I worked on the user feedback report. I learned how to organize the data in Google Sheets. It wasn't perfect, but it was clear. When he finished, his manager said, "Good job, Arif." Thank you. That moment gave him courage. He started asking more questions. He gave ideas during group discussions. He even helped another intern who wasn't confident with English. His own voice, once weak and shaky, now carried strength and belief. Each time he spoke, he grew a little more. One day, his mentor messaged him after a team meeting. "Arif, I just want to say, you've improved faster than anyone I've ever seen. Keep going, you're doing great." Arif read the message 3 times. Then he closed his eyes and smiled. He felt something deep in his chest, a kind of warmth that he hadn't felt in a long time. Someone believed in him, and because of that, he began to believe in himself. It was more than just an internship now. It was a turning point. He started dreaming again. Bigger dreams. Not just of speaking English, but of using English to reach new heights. He remembered something he once saw online. Google internship for global talent. Back then, it felt impossible, but now it felt possible. He started researching. He found out that Google sometimes offered online internships for students or learners from around the world. The competition was tough. The selection process was strict. But something inside him whispered, "Why not try?" He wrote down everything he would need: a resume, a strong cover letter, and, most importantly, a good interview. He knew the interview would be in English. He knew the questions would be difficult. But this time, he wasn't scared. He was ready to prepare like never before. He watched videos of Google interviews and practiced answering questions like, "Tell me about yourself. What is your biggest strength? Describe a time you solved a problem." He recorded his answers and listened to his pronunciation. He asked his mentor for feedback. He practiced in the mirror every morning. He studied English idioms and business vocabulary. He even printed out a photo of the Google logo and taped it above his desk. It became a symbol, not of a company, but of a goal, a mountain he was ready to climb. His family saw him preparing every day. His mother said, "You're working so hard." "I'm proud of you," his younger brother asked. "Do you think you'll get it?" Arif smiled and said, "I don't know, but I know I will do my best." And that was enough. One night, after another long practice session, he looked at himself in the mirror. He remembered the boy who learned English from torn newspapers, the boy who failed his first test, the boy who was too scared to speak. That boy was still in him. But now he was standing taller. Now he was preparing for the biggest interview of his life. He whispered, "You've come this far. Don't stop now." And with that, He opened his laptop and clicked Apply. The day of the Google interview. The email came early in the morning. The subject line read, Google interview, scheduled. Arif stared at the screen, not blinking. His heart began to beat faster. His palms were sweaty. For a few seconds he couldn't move. Then, slowly, a smile appeared on his face. This was it. The moment he had dreamed of. The moment he had worked for. The moment that once felt impossible. He was going to interview with Google. Excitement rushed through him, followed quickly by fear. What if he failed again? What if they didn't understand his accent? What if his mind went blank? But no, he stopped those thoughts. He reminded himself, You've come so far. You're ready. He began preparing like never before. He made a list of the most common interview questions. Tell me about yourself. Why do you want this internship? What are your strengths and weaknesses? He wrote answers, practiced them aloud, and recorded his voice to listen for mistakes. He stood in front of the mirror, pretending the reflection was the interviewer. He joined mock interviews online and asked his speaking group for feedback. Each night, he listened to business English podcasts and motivational videos. He was nervous, but he was also determined. On the night before the interview, he sat on the roof, the same roof where his journey began. He looked up at the stars and remembered the day he wrote his first English sentence. I will learn English. It felt like a lifetime ago. Back then, he had no internet, no money, no teacher, only hope. Now, he was about to speak to someone from Google. He whispered, You can do this, and went to bed with a heart full of courage. The next morning, he woke up early, showered, and put on his best shirt. He opened the old laptop his neighbor had given him and checked the internet connection again and again. He opened the video call link and waited, his hands shaking slightly. Then the screen lit up, and the interviewer appeared. Good morning, Arif. Can you hear me? Yes, he said, trying to smile. Good morning. I can hear you clearly. And just like that, the interview began. The first few minutes were the hardest. He stumbled over one or two words, but then he took a deep breath and remembered everything he had practiced. He slowed down. He focused. He told his story, not just what he had done, but why he had done it. He spoke about learning from trash, studying with a cracked phone, talking to the mirror, and failing his first test. He said, I come from a place where not many people speak English. But I wanted to learn because I knew English could open doors. I didn't have much, but I had the will to try. The interviewer listened closely. Her eyes softened as he spoke. He talked about his first internship, how he struggled, how he kept improving, how one kind message from a mentor changed everything. He spoke slowly but clearly, with passion in his voice. And when the interviewer asked, What does this opportunity mean to you? He answered from the heart. It's more than just an internship. It's proof that effort matters, that someone from a small town, without money or support, can still reach big dreams. There was a short silence. Then the interviewer smiled and said, Thank you, Arif. That was very inspiring. The interview ended. Arif closed the laptop and sat in silence. He didn't know if he had passed, but deep inside he felt proud. He had spoken with honesty, courage, and belief, and that was already a victory. A week passed. He checked his email every day. Each time his phone buzzed, his heart jumped, Then, one evening, the email arrived. Congratulations, Arif. You've been accepted for the Google internship. He dropped the phone. For a second, he just sat there, staring at the screen, unable to move. Then the tears came. He laughed and cried at the same time. His mother rushed in, worried, but when she saw his face, she understood. You got it? She asked. He nodded. Yes, I got it. They hugged. His little brother clapped and shouted, My brother works for Google. The whole family was filled with joy and disbelief. Later that night, Arif went back up to the roof. The stars were out again, just like before. But this time, everything was different. He was no longer the boy who whispered dreams to the sky. He was the boy who made them come true. He closed his eyes and remembered the foreign woman who came into his father's shop. How he couldn't help her. How he felt small and useless. That moment had started it all. And now, here he was, ready to speak with the world, ready to step into a future that once felt too far away. He whispered again, not in doubt, but with pride. I will learn English. But this time, he added, I did learn, and I'll never stop. From silence to global voice. Arif sat quietly at his desk, looking at the glowing screen in front of him. His name was listed among the speakers for an international online event about learning English. It didn't feel real. Just a few years ago, he couldn't say a full sentence in English. He used to freeze whenever someone spoke to him in the language. He used to whisper dreams to the stars from a rooftop in his village, dreams that felt too far away. Now, people from around the world were waiting to hear his voice. He took a deep breath, adjusted his headset, and smiled. When his name was called, he clicked the microphone button and began speaking. Hello, everyone. My name is Arif. I'm from a small village where very few people speak English. Today, I work in tech, and English made that possible. His voice was calm, steady, confident. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just telling his truth, and the truth was powerful. He shared his journey, not to show off, but to give hope. He spoke about the early days. No internet, no teacher, no money. Just a cracked phone and a dream. He talked about failing his first test, crying in frustration and wanting to give up. And he talked about how each small step, watching YouTube videos, writing journals, joining speaking groups, slowly changed him from the inside out. I used to be the quietest person in the room, he said, but now I help others speak up. As he spoke, hundreds of viewers left comments in the chat. This is so inspiring. I feel like you're telling my story. If he can do it, maybe I can too. He smiled. That was his message. That was why he was here. If you're listening to this and thinking you're not smart enough, or rich enough, or good enough to learn English, please don't believe that lie. You don't need perfect tools. You just need the decision to start. Start small. Start scared. But start. He paused for a second, letting the words sink in. I failed many times. I was laughed at. I was ignored. But I didn't stop. And every day, I got a little better. Not just in English, but in confidence, in discipline, in belief. It wasn't just about learning grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary. It was about who he became through the process. A person who didn't give up. A person who believed in effort. A person who could speak to the world. As the event ended, someone asked him, "What does English mean to you now?" He thought for a moment, then answered softly, English is not just a language, it's a key. It opened doors I didn't even know existed. It gave me a new life, not just a job, but a voice. That night after the event, Arif went back to the rooftop of his house. It was quiet, just like before. He looked up at the stars, like he always did. But this time, he didn't feel small. He remembered the boy he used to be, scared, unsure, silent. That boy still lived inside him. But now, he walked beside someone stronger. Someone who had faced failure, who had fallen and risen, who had learned that progress doesn't come from talent. It comes from persistence, from silence to speech, from doubt to belief, from hopelessness to inspiration. He knew now, dreams don't come true overnight, but they do come true if you don't give up. And so, with a smile on his face and a heart full of gratitude, he whispered one last sentence into the night air, this time in perfect English. If I can do it, you can too. Thank you for joining this powerful journey, from silence to confidence, from a small rooftop dream to a voice heard around the world. If this story touched your heart, if you saw even a small piece of yourself in it, then don't stop here. Leave a comment. Tell us where you are in your English journey. Are you just starting? Are you feeling stuck? Or are you ready to dream bigger? Like this video to help more learners find it. Subscribe to Read and Learn English for more true emotional stories that help you grow your English and your confidence, step by step. Turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Remember, English is not just a language,